I guess I have a special update for you guys. Something I'm not normally doing because I have to talk very carefully about my own personal issues because court is ongoing. And so I have to be very careful. But I do want to correct something that is what I'll call a misunderstanding of Minnesota law that was released yesterday. All right. So if you have not heard, some documents in my case just keep getting released. It's amazing. It's very, very interesting how that keeps happening. But that being said, particular set of documents came out and people don't understand how Minnesota law works. So I will politely correct them because no one should know this. No one should know how this works. But people don't understand how Minnesota family law works in juvenile protection matters. So I'm going to explain it in very high level, no specifics about my case, because I want people to understand what they're seeing a little bit. So what was released or leaked in my case are what's called long-term placement plans. And Minnesota has a rule in child custody matters. Minnesota has a timer, a very strict timer, that by 364 days from the time that a child is removed from parents' custody, the government has to have already made all of their decisions about what will happen with the child. So what they do is to get around the fact that doing all this takes a lot of time. And some people will be like compliant for a long time and then screw up at the end, or be really big screw ups at the beginning and be compliant at the end. They have to go ahead and do what's called concurrent planning. So what you have is what's happening in reality. And then the government also has to generate these long-term care plans, typically out of home placement plans, in the event that they need to keep the children for longer than this 364-day timeline. Okay. They have to have this filed, and there are deadlines. Our deadline for the government filing those plans in my case was July 9th, which is why they were filed on that date. Now, what people erroneously think, and this again is not anyone's fault because you wouldn't know this. Normally, you'd never even see this shit. No one would see this shit in a normal case, but it's me, so it's not normal. Normally, what would happen is these plans would be filed, but there's also what's actually going on, which isn't actually filed. And I know that sounds weird, but that's because there's no necessity of filing it. So people automatically, they saw these documents, and some people assumed that these long-term care plans were the actual trajectory for the placement of my children. I can happily say that that's not true because these long-term care plans are fucking horrifying. They have nothing to do with where we are right now. Now, obviously, I can't talk about any of this stuff, any of the dates or anything like that, but just know that my children will be returning home much sooner than people think. And I'm not faulting people for misunderstanding the law, misunderstanding the documents that they're seeing, and misunderstanding the process, and for coming up with very, very negative conclusions about me because they only get one side of the story. And I have two options. I can try and sell you my side of the story and possibly jeopardize or compromise my own case. I could do that. Or I can do all my talking in court outside of very specific factual matters that I can, that don't have any impact. And for me to say that these long-term care plans were filed on July 9th, because that's when the timeline was, and that we are nowhere near that long-term care trajectory. In fact, we have a much faster timeline. There's nothing wrong with me saying that. Now, of course, anything can change, right? Like, this is child custody and the government has a lot of leeway. For example, if I go on a giant meth bender, probably going to change the timeline and move towards that other long-term planning. But assuming everything remains the same, it won't be anywhere fucking near that. So I just wanted to clear that up because I know like there's some people out there who just genuinely don't understand Minnesota family law, especially juvenile protection. It's a highly specialized practice area. And if you're not in it, you're just not going to know. And then there's some other like fat, lumpy retards out there who are reading documents thinking that they're making some sort of bold statement and they're making grandiose stuff while trying to deflect from their own problems. Like, those people are out there too. You'll have to figure out who those people are. I just know that generally speaking, that happens. But in my case, I also know the truth. And unfortunately, for me, I guess, is I can't share that truth with you until everything's fucking locked down. Until the court cases are resolved, it's just too damn risky. And in fact, I can't even really talk about people in these cases and the shit that I've seen happen, or the shit that has been done. People saying stuff either publicly or privately. I can't talk about any of that because any of these potential witnesses that are out there, obviously, I can't make anything that could be seen in any way as some sort of intimidation or threat or whatever. No matter if they do it or not, I can't, because the government will fist me if I do. So when people are, I was talking to a friend, they're like, well, you could share your side of the story, like just on these things. And I'm like, no, I actually can't. I can't talk about any of this stuff. And I do have to let people just kind of say what they're going to say. And it sucks, but that's the wise thing to do. So again, there are obviously exceptions. I've talked, like even today, I've talked about something in my case. What I'm talking about is highly specific, specifically fact-oriented, and a general principle of Minnesota law. And I'm happy to say that people's speculation about that, while again founded in their own knowledge and their own access to information, is fine. It just happens to be incorrect. So, but all that, those updates will come as reality settles into place and court cases are wrapped up, and it'll be great. So cheers to all of you, though, for taking such an interest in my life. Again, I really hope that one day I get to tell the entire fucking story in some capacity, unshackled by the specter of lawsuits that are ongoing. So, in the meanwhile, I'm not begrudging people their opinions. I'm not begrudging people their conclusions. I can't offer up arguments against them. So sorry, but I appreciate you guys watching, hanging out, making fun of me or not. It's okay.